gold industry or the precious metals industry involves mining that takes place in a diverse number of locations. So the industry is quite challenged to trace the metal from the source right up to the refining and then through the supply chain till it reaches the final user. The SPMA is very committed to ensuring that its members and the ecosystem that it services is able to strictly adhere to the OECD guidelines for responsible sourcing.
So Mimosi is a blockchain application that enables the full traceability of conflict minerals throughout various supply chains. We can't go to the mines to inspect the source of the gold. We track the transactions that are associated with the buying and selling of gold from mine to consumer. The blockchain creates a permanent trail of those transactions and their associated documents.
So when looking at items on the Mimosi mobile client, one of the options you have is to look at the makeup of an item, and this shows you a couple of things. First off, as you'll see, it shows you where in the world that product is. It'll also show you what the product is, 100% of gold, and the percentage of origin for that product. Both of these examples have 100% attached to them, but if you had a product that came from multiple sources or made up of multiple parts, you'd be able to see the percentage and the origin of those.
Blockchain is append only, it's tamper resistant, so it has a very powerful mechanism for keeping track of all the transactions, like tracking the provenance of each and every item. Almost all the operations on blockchain are cryptographically secured. It is permissioned access, so again there's another layer of security and trust added as part of the fabric of the blockchain itself.
So here we see the result of scanning a QR code for a shipment. Mimosi allows you the potential to use barcodes, QR codes, or NFC codes. This example right here is the information you would get from scanning a QR code, and you can see that you get the identification, the name, and the item type. So when finishing a shipment or a transformation, Mimosi will prompt the user for input on a mass balance equation, and essentially this takes the input before and after the transaction and allows the user to set a tolerance. If this calculation is to fail, saying that the end weight is outside of the tolerance set, the user gets the final say on whether the transaction should still be allowed to occur. Mimosi offers 4 types of traces, and each of these traces have 2 components. The components are upstream and downstream, where upstream is in reference to the item you're tracing going up to the source, and downstream is in reference to the item you're tracing going down to the product. The specific 4 types of traces are geotraces, supply traces, product traces, and transaction traces, and I'll go through each of those briefly. Supply traces demonstrate company-to-company interactions, allowing a visual representation of which company had control or custody of which product at which point in the production cycle. Product traces are from the perspective of a product and changes that happen to it specifically. So if 2 products came together to make a final product, or whether a product was changed in some way, all of that would be available in the product trace. The geotrace provides the user with specific location information about the product, and which companies are housing a product at any given point in time, and which companies actually own said product. And finally, transaction traces are probably the biggest out of all the other graphs because it records every transaction that happens on the Mimosi client. This includes the registration of items, the starting and finishing of transformations, shipments, change of custody, and any other flexible transactions that the company wishes to use. Mimosi also provides the option to associate any pertinent business documents with any of the responsible sourcing transactions. This could be anything from a PDF of a delivery invoice ID to more specific documents pertaining to an item. We also have a very specific system that allows organizations to share these documents with each other.
This kind of transparency, authentication, certification, and trackability makes a huge difference to the players.
PeerLedger would like to be the tool that companies turn to enable them to reach their sustainability goals.